Hi, everybody. Neil Thompson here, the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Jasmine Sadler. After earning a degree in aerospace engineering and also earning her MBA, she now heads the STEAM Collaborative. It's an initiative whose goal is to increase equity in education. Very interested to learn more about her transition to the STEAM Collaborative, the ways in which the STEAM Collaborative executes its mission, and also ways in which public speaking has kind of figured into everything. Welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews, Jasmine.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So first question, I noticed, I did note in the intro that you studied aerospace engineering. What motivated you to study that particular discipline?
For me, I was always pretty good in math and science, and then I got put into a lot of summer programs and engineering programs growing up in Detroit. There's the Detroit area pre-college engineering program, and my parents are both computer specialists. My brother studied computer engineering, and then kind of motivated me to actually pursue engineering as a career. And when I was in high school and had to decide what major I wanted to go into, there's a space shuttle disaster. So that's why I decided aerospace engineering.
Oh, okay, that's cool. But I also noticed that you got your MBA as well. What prompted you to pursue that?
And so 5 years ago, I started my company, the STEAM Collaborative, and I just wanted more education. I love learning, and I knew that there were several things about business that I didn't know. So I went and got my MBA. And it specialized, the concentration was innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay, cool. So when you worked as an engineer, what type of work did you do?
I started off in logistics, so analyzing failures and predicting failures. And my first job was as a design engineer. So I was a software design engineer. Never thought I'd get a job actually doing software, but that was what my first job was. And it's because I was really good at programming, but didn't think that that would be my career. But that's kind of what it was. I was a design engineer for the software for gas turbines. And then I was a test engineer testing them, running through the data with the customers. If something was going wrong during the test, then leading the team, letting the technicians know what to fix on it. So a lot of technicians were twice my age, had kids my age. And so leading them through how to fix some of the problems that were wrong and test. And then I worked as a quality engineer. So again, coming like full circle back to finding problems, going through Six Sigma method, black belt methodology of like actually solving some problems and creating some lasting change in the company. And then my last job was as a quality manager. So over the quality engineers and the quality technicians. And so that was my last experience before I left corporate America after 10 years as an engineer.
All these transitions that you made, so you started off software design engineering, then test engineering, then quality engineering, then quality manager. Were these all transitions that you pushed for, or were they just what the company needed at the time?
No, they were all, I pushed for all of those. My first one was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that was just the first job that I got out of college. And so kind of took it at the time because that was also during the time of the recession. So took that job, but then knew about 6 months in that I didn't want to be a career engineer for 30 years. And I knew that the best way to do that was through entrepreneurship. So I started thinking of my business within 6 months after I started working, but then knew that I at least needed to get to a different place in the country or in the world because I'm not opposed to living abroad. And so it was, yeah, I pushed for it. Well, actually, I was planning to go and get my MBA then and go to a school in Minneapolis. They were having a really good deal for early career Black women to pursue their MBA at the time. So that's what I was considering, but then going to a National Society of Black Engineers conference, I ran into some old friends and they interviewed me. And at that point, you know, I'm a experienced professional. I'm not an entry-level employee anymore after working there for about 2 years. So then, but yeah, I had to interview 4 interviews later, ended up out here in San Diego. And then, but yeah, from there, all the other promotions were ones that I had to push for myself. I had mentors, usually mainly one mentor that was kind of in that next role that allowed me to get to that role, or quickly made a mentor in that next role, but also did a lot on the, I guess, advocating for myself. And so I would call the hiring manager, set up a meeting with them before I applied, and usually after I applied. And the one way that I got one of my jobs, I asked the boss, can I come and sit in one of your meetings, one of your group meetings, just to see how it goes, to see if I'll, just so that I can see if I'll be a good fit for that group. And that's the thing that happens when you get further in your career, is now you want to make sure that that next career move is best for you and not just best for the company.
Oh, for sure. You mentioned the importance of mentors during all this time. How'd you go about finding these mentors?
Oh, I don't know. I think what the main one, Brian Wesley, he's one of my best friends to this day. He was leading the African American Employee Resource Group. So we had a lot of just personal connections. He's a leader at his church. Same thing with me. And so we worked a lot together, just even outside of the work scope of things, but just on diversity, inclusion, making people feel valued at work. And so that was a big connection point for us. And then when a job opened up in the group of test engineering, which is basically like a really coveted job at that company, he told me about it and kind of prepped me for the interview. So, you know, that's really how I found mentors, is people that align with me in ways outside of the workplace, and finding those mutual connections, and they know my passion, I know theirs, and then they can actually see if that'll fit into the next role or something else to do for the company.
Okay. With the roles that you had in engineering, were they what you expected them to be?
Ooh. The roles themselves, I think yes. Yes, the roles themselves, yes, but a lot of the extra complications that came with them, being a Black woman in this space, those were the harder parts that I didn't really expect. Yeah, it got to the point where being an engineer was the easy part. Like, doing the actual engineering work wasn't bad. Doing spreadsheets and graphs and software and meeting with the customers, all of that stuff wasn't the hard part. But finding the right way to communicate what I was doing to some of my managers, to other people in other groups, that was probably the harder part, to get promoted and get recognized, that I had to put together basically my own recognition package for them to recognize me. So, but the jobs themselves, yes, I mean, pretty close to the job descriptions for the most part. But yeah, the other things that came with that, I didn't really expect as much.
I know that there's a big difference between being an individual contributor and then also being a manager of people. What were the biggest, I guess, challenges that you faced being a manager of people, and how'd you overcome them?
Yeah, so I wasn't a manager that long. It was an interim position while the last company that I was with, they actually promised me that I would be the manager, told me that, you know, they're preparing me for that. There was a manager in place that was planning to retire and was very transparent about that he was planning to retire in a given time, and then I would be the manager after him. And so when he retired sooner than anybody expected, the big question mark came of like, who are we going to hire instead? And it's like, probably the person that you told would have the job, but that ended up not being the case. And they had me as interim manager, so I had to transition myself from the previous boss. Of course, he's retiring. He wasn't really sitting down with me, even though great guy, great manager actually, but he wasn't sitting down with me to transition me into the role. I had to set meetings on his calendar every day and create my own document of things that he would do daily, weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, annually, and a link to all of those things of where I could find them. So I created that for myself to transition myself into the role. And then they ended up spending some time to find someone to interview against me so that they could have a diverse interview panel. So they found someone to interview against me and they ended up selecting that person. And so before they actually selected him, I was the interim manager for a while, I mean, for a few months. And the big difference that I noticed in that role was that I needed to be present a whole lot more. There was a 6 o'clock stand-up meeting for the technicians that now reported to me. So I needed to be at their stand-up meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning, but then we also had a second shift. So then I had to be at those stand-up meetings in the afternoon and then also just kind of be present a lot more. And so that shift didn't end until very late at night, 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock sometimes. And so, you know, I had to be present a whole lot more. And for me, the hardest part wasn't the job, of course. The hardest part was that I was starting to sacrifice things with my company. So I had to sacrifice, you know, speaking engagements, leading something for the National Society of Black Engineers on the college campus, because I give back to the colleges a lot. And I had to not do those things that I loved and not do the company that I started that I loved, because now I need to be physically, mentally, emotionally present in this manager position a lot more. And then with the added pressure that I knew that I was being watched, almost like that I was auditioning for this job that was actually promised to me initially. So, so that was the biggest transition, and the hardest part of it was that I wasn't able to do anything that I love doing, that I had to be there and be present for the team.
So now that you're doing the STEAM Collaborative full time, what did you learn from your previous positions at these in these companies to prepare you for running the STEAM Collaborative?
Yeah, the main thing that I learned from the companies was to value individuals as people. You know, in a lot of the big corporations, you're just a badge number, and you know that's how they keep track of you. And so being able to know that I don't want a big corporation, I want this small, intimate, organic business model where everyone's individualism, you know, the diversity that that person brings, which sometimes, most times, doesn't have anything to do with what they look like on the outside, but it's the experiences that they've had, their culture, where they're from, all of those things add to the diversity of a company. And so that's what I learned a lot more, is to embrace what is important to people. And so figuring out how to make that kind of work for the company, but also just, you know, if it doesn't work for the company, be okay with that as well. And so being able to promote people as best as possible. That's what I learned, because that's not necessarily what I had in my work experience.
All right. So you certainly learned the things that you didn't like, and so with your current, the current business, you made sure that anything that you didn't like, you weren't going to transfer that to the STEAM Collaborative. That was smart on your part.
Thanks.
So what exactly are the services that the STEAM Collaborative provide?
Yeah, the main thing that I'm providing right now is project management. So any youth organization who is interested in doing a project or doing an event, especially for young people, for students, and they don't really have all the technical acumen. So either they need help with fundraising, or they need help with the day of execution of the program, or they need help with creating a curriculum. Those are the things that I'm able to provide. And so sometimes that means that I'm the one to chase down the students and bring them back. I'm the one to take them to the restroom. But, you know, I just want to be able to now give these STEAM leaders or youth organization leaders the opportunity to really be present and be fully present in the activities that they put on for the students. So I also tutor, and I also do public speaking and engagements like that in interviews. But the main thing that I do is project management to have more successful and more impactful programs for the kids.
Okay. So what type of organizations are the ones that would hire you?
Yeah, so some of the collabs that I've worked with already, Blue Heart Foundation, I know you've done some things with them. So they actually contracted me to do a STEM competition and didn't really give me many parameters and left my creativity to wander however it wanted to. So I did a 10-week program, 10-week STEM competition. I had two other people on my team, Josh and Brandon, and we executed this entrepreneurial, engineering, STEAM program for the boys. 12 of the students went through it. And then at the end of it, they ended up pitching the companies that they came out of through this STEM competition. So that's an example of one that had a really successful turnout.
Oh, nice. Is there any interest in working with schools?
Yeah, so there's always interest in working with schools. I know there's a lot of just red tape usually getting in the school system and actually making the space for a STEAM class or a STEAM program. And so that's why a lot of times I just function either outside of school time, which means either after school, during the summer, school breaks, things like that. But I definitely would love to get in the school system. But then there's also the option of, now that distance learning is here, that outside of school time is starting to merge more with the traditional schooling, where now, you know, everything that students are learning or things that they're able to touch with their hands are things that are in their houses, which has been the space that I function in for a long time anyway, is teaching them real world applications with items around their house. So, you know, now that things are kind of merging a little bit more, now I have been more of a primary educator. So the student that I tutor, initially I was tutoring, I was her supplement to her math class, but then since distance learning started, she hasn't had a formal math lesson from her teacher since March, and I've been her primary math educator. And so very proud to say that she went from a C and D average in math to a 4.0 after this past semester. So, you know, it's working, but again, I'm not a certified teacher. And so maybe now we can start considering people who aren't in the formal education space, you know, as a valued resource to teach our students.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was looking around your website, and I mentioned in the intro that the goal of STEAM Collaborative is to, provide equity in education. What
Mm-hmm.
would that look like if there was to be equity in education? What would that entail?
Yeah, so thanks for checking out steamcollab.com. So yeah, on there, the main mission is to exponentially increase equity in education. And so the exponential part, that's the little math part that I love. But how that started was, initially I was working with, one program, like I mentioned, like the Blue Heart Foundation, is 12 students that were part of the program that I ran. And then another one, it was maybe about 15 students or 20 students. But then being able to actually have these organizations start collaborating with each other. So now I'm not impacting 20 students, now I'm impacting 20 times 20 students, and so being able to work with those adult program leaders, and I can just work with 20 program leaders and instead of the 20 students. And so now that's that exponential factor increasing there. And so it's, just having equity in the space is like giving us access to opportunities that are available to everyone, and it's not giving us necessarily more. In some ways we may need more because we're so far behind. A lot of Black students in the public school system are not promoting, they're not being able to walk across the stage, and it's not just because they're Black, but then there's other factors that add into that, because if they're not able, if they have too many suspensions from school, And as research has shown, Black students are suspended from school a whole lot at a much more significant rate than other ethnicities and races. And so suspension affects if they can walk across the stage, how many tardies they have. And a lot of times the tardies aren't their fault, you know, especially middle school students. Sometimes they have to walk their classmates, their siblings to class first, or to their school first, and then walk to their school, or they're waiting on their parent or guardian to drop them off at school, or they're waiting on a friend's parent or guardian to pick them up to drop them off at school. So there's a lot of things that go into, you know, reasons why students might be tardy or might get suspended, or, you know, just may not be getting good grades. And to have that as a bearing on if they're able to walk across the stage, that's really tough. And so to be able to supplement a lot of that, or just to find out why, and maybe solving the root cause of some of these problems, that's what equity would look like.
All right. When it comes to public speaking, what topics do you like to speak about?
Oh, that's a great question. So a lot of people actually want me to talk about me. And so that's usually pretty easy because I am a dancer. I grew up as a trained ballerina, but then I've also done lyrical, point, jazz, hip hop, tap, lots of dance. And I know a lot of girls who are in spaces that are trying to push them into a STEM career actually are dancers. And so when I can talk about my experience being a dancer and also being an engineer, I love talking about that. I sometimes demo me dancing a dance move and then bring that back to like physics and engineering about, you know, when you spin with your arms into you, then you can spin faster. When you spin your arms overhead, like the classic ballerina arms, how that really affects like your momentum and your inertia and different things in physics terms like that. So love bringing real world things, especially things that people can relate to, back to STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Nice. When it comes to public speaking, is that something you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
I think I've always been okay with it. A lot of times I would just get really, really nervous initially, but then I started attending Toastmasters meetings, and that's helped a lot with the nervousness and just the comfort, especially within being in the Toastmasters group, to be able to just speak amongst friends that got really comfortable, which allowed me to speak publicly a lot more comfortably. And then I ended up serving as the vice president of education for the Toastmasters club I was in, and then also the acting president when the president had to step down. So that's been a big part in it. And it also helped frame my thoughts into like a beginning, middle, and ending that helped other people understand what I was saying a lot better. So yeah, that was the real big help. And then I haven't really been in the Toastmasters Club in the past few years. And so I start to feel those nerves sometimes come back when I'm about to speak. But then instead of trying to eliminate those, I've also learned to just embrace that and get that feeling of like, okay, well, this is usually an indication of when I really have something to say that I want to say. I kind of get those nerves and I'm like, that's when I know I have to say it. You know, I can't get those nerves and then not say whatever I needed to say. So that's helped a lot with just changing the mindset on nerves and what people are going to think what you're saying. And so, yeah, I really enjoy public speaking. You know, it's nerve-wracking sometimes, but especially when it's about me, it's not difficult to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, who knows you better than you, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right about I guess reframing how you see nervousness. I'm a big proponent of seeing nervousness of just, if you're not nervous about what you're talking about, it's probably because you don't care about what you're talking about all that much. So I firmly believe in what you're saying. When it comes to also for public speaking, do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a visual learner. So it's usually, if I'm going to use a PowerPoint or some type of presentation tool, then I'll create the presentation, and I'm like reciting what I'll say on those slides as I'm creating that slide. So that helps me a lot. Sometimes I used to write it all down first if I knew it would be more like a keynote speech that didn't have a slide or any presentation. Then I would write it all down, like an essay basically, write it all down and try to memorize it or outline after I write it all out, outline it into bullet points. And so then I can memorize a speech like that. But the main thing that a lot of people want, especially for children that I speak to, is the PowerPoint or some type of presentation, especially in Zoom. You can share that a lot easier, and then they can see pictures of me doing what I do. And so, yeah, I create the presentation first and just kind of mentally go through what I'm going to say for each of those slides.
Well, that's smart. One thing I forgot to mention in regards to your business, you're a part of an incubator. You're part of a cohort of an incubator currently. What do you hope to get out of being in that incubator?
Yeah, so I'm part of Connect All at the Jacob Center, and it's not actually an incubator, it's an accelerator program. And so kind of the difference in that is, incubators, they just kind of keep you in there and like kind of grow your thing, grow your business in there. But this is actually different than that. It's an accelerator program that is planning to accelerate our companies and grow them and scale them in a way that ultimately we're able to hire employees in the city of San Diego. So that's how they were able to fund all of us as founders, is that it was this guarantee that, that's really the vision for the program, is that we can actually hire employees in San Diego and kind of reduce unemployment in San Diego through our company. So that's really the main motivation, is to accelerate our company. So in doing that, we learn more about business. We've been learning about our customers. We learn about finance. So every week we have a session, a different session that lends to accelerating our business and not just incubating it. So it's kind of like a step beyond incubation. And so a lot of us have already either had our companies for at least a year. For me, I had it for 5 years. And so there's a lot of things that are already thought through with the company, but there's still a lot of opportunity for a lot more. And so going from this space of learning to now executing. So, the incubator is like really about learning this stuff, learning, different tools, learning how to create a mission statement, things like that. And a lot of us are past that, but not far past that, but just, past that space. And so now it's helping us execute in the executing space. So it's been an awesome program.
Wonderful. When it comes to the goal of that accelerator program is to scale businesses and to hire people within the city of San Diego, do you have any sense on the jobs that you would want people within the STEAM collaborative to do?
Yes. So ideally, if I can scale this, project management plan, then I'd be more able to speak and do real hands-on work with girls and African American students. For me, the plan, when I can hire employees, I really like to focus on my long-term vision, which is to have a STEAM university. And that way, all of the majors at the university are interdisciplinary between STEM and the arts. And then also in the shorter term, figuring out what to do for distance learning, especially for girls and African American students, where, ideally, maybe we can actually just do more of a homeschool model or charter school model where we're able to educate ourselves within this space and not necessarily have to depend or rely on what comes down from other people about what the plan for education is for our students. So for the employees that I'll have, it'll be people that can that have project management experience, that know how to execute, that know how to have milestones and set deadlines and actually reach those deadlines, who have a heart of service, who have a similar perspective that I do. And that's why the clients that I have, or the collabs that I have, actually trust me with the work, is because they know I have the same heart and the same spirit that they have, and I'm able to include that, but then also execute what they need done for them. So being able to have employees that can do that same thing, that'll be the plan. Yeah.
Wonderful. This has been really interesting learning more about the STEAM Collaborative, Jasmine. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about things that you're working on?
Things I'm working on. So there's a few things. I'm in talks with an app development company about how to really bring this to phones for students. A lot of students have phones and YouTube and things like that. So working with a company to develop an app around STEAM in education, especially in distance learning environment, working on a book, working on practicing my piano back here. I still love dancing and love painting. There's still just, a lot of personal things that I still want to learn. Thinking about going back to school within the next year. So just several things that, a lot of people think that I'm busy, but there's definitely still time and availability to do a lot of things, especially in this time where, it's a time that everybody can find something new within themselves, be able to grow that, be able to meditate more, be able to exercise more, and consider a healthier lifestyle. So all of those things are definitely important to me on a personal level. So yeah, those definitely wanted to share that. Thank you for that.
Wonderful. How can people get in touch with you, Jasmine?
You can get in touch with me. The best way is through my website, steamcollab.com. There's a place there where you can register for my email list. So anything that I post, you'll get an email about it. There's also Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the STEAM Collab, THESTEAM, Collab, COLLAB. And I have some information on there about the events that I have coming up. A lot of events I have coming up are open to the public and virtual. So, definitely keep a lookout for those. And then you can always email me, Jasmine at steamcollab.com.
Excellent. Everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. Consider checking it out. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Neil. Glad we got it together. Thank you.